For our project, we decided to focus on the country of Laos, which is one of the most green and biologically diverse places in Southeast Asia. In this presentation, we highlight the environmental issues within the country, specifically pertaining to the effects of deforestation and the actions being made to prevent further destruction.
Deforestation is the widespread elimination of trees in both natural ways and human-initiated. Deforestation can happen for many reasons, such as natural disasters and them being torn down for profit, such as logging, making ways for infrastructure, and urbanization, and even for agricultural use. It does, however, bring up many consequences, such as habitat loss, soil erosion, greenhouse gas emissions, helping contribute to global warming, soil pollution, and leading to food insecurity. So even though in this presentation we're talking about specifically Laos's deforestation problems, deforestation will have an effect worldwide. To truly understand timber in the economy, we need to understand why timber was so important to Laos in the first place. There is a time in 1986 when Laos's economy was restricted to only domestic trade and investments. Timber companies were important to helping pay for the government activities. The forest can help provide many important aspects for the locals, such as herbs, medicines, supplies for different construction projects, including housing, building fences, tools, and even fuel, and to help get food. When food is scarce, they can also sell it at the local markets to help make a profit. It is said that 75% of citizens rely on the forest for their livelihoods. The forests have been separated into three parts: production, protection, and conservation forests. Protection forests were established around the forestry law in 2007. They help with national security and protecting watersheds. Production forests help regulate logging and were established in response to the high rates of deforestation. And finally, conservation forests were started in 1993 and were used to help save the biodiversity. They cover about 14% of the total area of the country. So each category of forests are established either at the national, district, or village level of the government. So this is just showing the correlation of the forest and the economy. And as you can see, there's a steady rise after 1986, when again, Laos was only able to do domestic trades and investments. In 2016, the Prime Minister established strict measures to prevent illegal logging to regulate the timber processing industry. For example, the export of unfinished timber products has been prohibited. The order appears to have been effective as log exports have diminished by a big amount. However, it is still reported that timber is being smuggled into Vietnam to hide operations. If illegal timber exports continue, the forest will still be at risk. Laos has lost about 30% of forest since the 1950s.
For soil pollution, land degradation is already present in Laos, including nutrient depletion, structural decline and compaction, biological decline, chemical deterioration, and soil erosion, which this has resulted from practicing slash and burn cultivation, or their type is pioneer slash and burn, which is mainly done in provinces in the north because of the agricultural land is located on a slope and is more susceptible to soil erosion. Provinces in the middle are experiencing the most biodiversity loss, and the wetlands are still at an early stage, and they're resulting from chemical waste in the industrial sector and long periods of drought. Soil pollution in general has resulted from illegal land use, uncontrolled mining, electronic waste, and chemical waste of chemical contamination from agricultural production. In general, there's very little information about soil pollution, and fertility loss is caused by soil pollution in Laos.
Trees help reduce the amount of greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere. So with an increase of deforestation, that also means we're getting an increase of greenhouse gases released too, since there's less trees. So to help fight this, there was a You Said Leaf project from 2011 to 2016. So basically, the countries Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, and Cambodia all got together and were like, hey, let's see how much we can decrease the greenhouse gas emissions within the 5 years. So obviously, within those 5 years, there wasn't going to be a time when they decreased the greenhouse emissions completely, but they were still unsuccessful in significantly decreasing the emissions. So illegal deforestation and deforestation in general is still going to cause an increase within the gases. But since the price of timber is being so high, that's also going to cause people to want to go cut down trees and everything too. They had proposed an action plan to help further fight the greenhouse emission effects, which means GPS trackings of the timber vehicles. They're trying to recreate and make the current laws and regulations stronger, and monitoring this forest.
As mentioned previously, Laos is one of the most biologically diverse countries in Southeast Asia and is in fact a part of the top 10 most biodiverse places in the world. In short, Laos is home to a multitude of endangered species and has thousands of different species among plants and animals. Therefore, its significance on a global scale cannot be denied, and if it suffers from severe environmental destruction, the effects could be devastating. However, not only important internationally, biodiversity is also a huge part of the Laos economic system and livelihood of its people. Because of the many botanical species, there is a broad choice of produce for locals to sell. 67% of the population depends on this type of rural business. Moreover, one of Laos's biggest appeals is its attraction to tourists, for the country is visually stunning. Therefore, ruining the environment would also take away tourist jobs and one of Laos's most significant means of funds. To combat the attack on biodiversity via deforestation and other means, Laos's government has taken intense action on devising a plan to last over the years. One part of this plan includes a participation in the Convention on Biological Diversity, which has been ratified by 196 other nations thus far, and works to protect overexploitation of biological resources. Laos joined the convention's cause in 1996, and it is possible to find their detailed annual reports on the state of biodiversity online, as well as the efforts being done to promote it. The reports have too much information to discuss in detail, however, they greatly express focus on the flaws in their current system, which is controlled by the NBCA, the National Biodiversity Conservation Areas, and how they plan interventions and prospects for future improvement. Continuing the battle to maintain biodiversity, just 3 years before the Convention on Biological Diversity was ratified, the National Protected Area System of Laos was established in 1993. It has been a fundamental utility to protect and promote the biodiversity of the country and oppose mass deforestation. As seen on the graph, only 3 national parks are currently established, along with a handful of national protected areas. Compared to the entirety of the country, only 15.1% of the country is covered by the system at present time. Although a fantastic step forward, it has a long way to go in order to protect all the biologically significant areas. Outside of protecting biodiversity, it also regulates the biophysical environment of Laos, including composition of the atmosphere and climate, the protection of water and soil, and the prevention of erosion. Never an easy fight against corporate capitalism, Laos faces the drawback of upsetting industrial investors and stakeholders. Perhaps this is why the fight to maintain a stable environment is so challenging. However, the government has formulated some prospects on how to assure everyone is happy. While creating national parks is a way to preserve the environment, there is also some construction required for viewing pleasure, which is specifically skewed towards tourists. Therefore, construction companies can rest assured that they'll have their fair hand in profit making, while those who only contribute to deforestation will feel burdened. Another fine example of mutual benefit is the creation of hydropower plants along protected rivers and lakes. This would be helpful towards the environment as it would prevent erosion and flooding.
In terms of early legislation efforts in Laos to help reduce environmental decline, in 1991 there was a clause in the Constitution of the Lao People's Democratic Republic, specifically Article 17, which requires that all organizations and individuals must safeguard the environment and natural resources existing on the surface and under the land, forest, animals, water sources, and air. In 1993, there is the Regime Boundary Agreement between Laos and China, which provides environmental protection along their border, specifically involving water pollution and the negative effects of hydroelectric power plant construction, fishing using explosive devices and toxic chemicals, forest fires, and nationals from one country practicing slash and burn agriculture on the other country's land. Also in 1993, the Prime Minister issued a decree saying that 18 areas are now National Biodiversity Conservation Areas. Since then, there's also been 27 Important Bird Areas, or IPAs, but there's still a little bit ways to go in terms of conservation because 8 of those IPAs are outside of any protected zone. There are also 24 National Protected Areas for forests, and local authorities have also established more than 57 provincial conservation forests, 144 district conservation forests, and 52 district protection forests, which altogether covers about 20.2% of all Laos and land area. On this slide, you'll see the different forest management categories designated by the government of Laos, but also notice how they overlap. Continuing with early legislation in regards to the environment in Laos, in 1994, there's a law on promotion and management of foreign investments in the Lao People's Democratic Republic, specifically Article 20, which mandates that foreign investors shall conduct their business operations consistently with the laws of the Lao PDR in all aspects and ensure measures for the protection of the environment. In 1995, there is an agreement on the cooperation for sustainable development on the Mekong River Basin between Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. This provides for protection of the environment, the natural resources, aquatic life, and the ecological balance of the Mekong River, especially now during all the development and water usage. Also in 1995, Laos was a part of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which their goal that they recognized is to stable greenhouse gas concentrations at a level that would prevent dangerous interference with the climate system. It states that such a level should be achieved within a time frame sufficient to allow ecosystems to adapt naturally to climate change, to ensure that food production is not threatened, and to enable economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner. In 1996, Laos was a part of the Convention on Biological Diversity, which main goal was to protect biodiversity resources and to ensure their sustainable usage. In 1998, Laos was a part of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which establishes rules governing all use of the oceans and their resources. In 2003, Laos signed the Kyoto Protocol, which main goal is to reduce and limit greenhouse gas emissions in order to reach individual targets. In 2004, Laos became party to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, which ensures that international trade in specimens of wild animals and plants does not threaten their survival. Laos is also part of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations as of 1997, where they take part in ASEAN ministerial meetings on the environment and ASEAN and senior officials on the environment as well. ASEAN in general is a regional grouping that promotes economic, political, and security cooperation between its 10 members, including Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. Their minstrel meetings meet at least once every 3 years to foster ASEAN environmental cooperation. Their senior officials meetings recommends policy guidelines regarding sustainable development, facilitates incorporation of their environmental considerations into their ASEAN programs, monitors the state of ASEAN natural resources, and promotes cooperation among its members. Lao Penal Code also addresses environmental crimes. For instance, they have set fines and imprisonment for destruction of forests, exploitation of mineral resources without authorization, and illegal hunting and fishing. In 2010, Laos also had the Decree on Environmental Impact Assessment, which was huge. It provides rules, regulations, and measures to measure and monitor implementation of the environmental impact assessment. According to Lao laws and regulation, ensures protection and efficient use of natural resources, guarantees the right of the people, and applies to persons, entities, and organizations in both public and private sectors, domestic and foreign, that operates investment projects and activities in Lao PDR. This was their first huge step towards framework legislation. In 2012, they established the Environmental Protection Law, which is now known as their framework legislation. It specifies necessary principles, rules, and measures for managing, restoring, and protecting the environment in order to protect public, natural resources, and biodiversity, and to ensure the sustainable socioeconomic development of the nation. With all of this environmental legislation in Laos, there are multiple factors that influence the effectiveness of this legislation. The first factor is coordination between the central government and its provinces. As you can see by the map, Vientiane is located almost on the border of Laos, and there's very scattered provinces, which are then broken up into districts, then cities, then villages. And there's various areas which have different ethnic groups and different modes of survival. The second factor is making sure that everything's implemented and enforced correctly, following the environmental framework throughout the board. And the third factor is environmental education awareness, so making sure that everyone is aware of what's happening and what needs to be done, including the creation of domestic non-governmental or environmental organizations. For example, there has been a couple of new ones, including Ecotourism Laos and Green Discovery, and they have become more effective in recent years. And the fourth factor is the importance of ecotourism, which is considered to be an untapped huge market for Laos. And there's a lot of financial rewards from keeping up a pristine natural environment. Here's a graph representation of international tourism to Laos, including ecotourism as well. As you can see, it has increased dramatically in recent years.